Most men chase, very few attract. And ironically, the harder a man chases, the more she pulls away. But the man who understands the key that separates the pursuer from the naturally attractive male, doesn't chase, because he doesn't need to. He becomes the gravitational center. Women orbit around him, and not because he's rich or famous, but because he knows the truth. Attraction isn't something you get, it's something you become. This is the core misunderstanding that keeps millions of men stuck in the exhausting cycle of pursuit. They think attraction is a transaction. Buy her dinner, compliment her looks, respond instantly to every text, and somehow she'll reciprocate. But all that does is scream one thing: I'm trying to prove myself to you. Women don't respond to that. They test it, they sense it, and they walk away from it. Fast. Neil Strauss, in The Game, called this dynamic the difference between alpha behavior and approval-seeking behavior. One pulls her in, the other pushes her away. Let's take a step back. Why do most men pursue in the first place? Because they believe she's the prize. Because they haven't made themselves the prize. And when a man doesn't value himself as highly as he values her, the power dynamic collapses. He's reactive. She leads. He follows. He thinks, if I do everything right, maybe she'll choose me. She thinks, if he's trying this hard, who else is he trying this hard for? There's no mystery, no tension, no challenge. And without those ingredients, without that edge, there is no attraction. Mystery, the godfather of modern seduction, designed entire systems around flipping that dynamic. He taught men to spark attraction first before showing any signs of desire. Why? Because attraction has to feel earned, not given freely. When you lead with desire, you become predictable. When you lead with self-control, you become intriguing. One of Mystery's core rules? Don't demonstrate interest until she earns it. It's not about being cold. It's about being discerning. Powerful men don't offer access to their world just because a woman is attractive. They let her qualify herself. They let her invest. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. The more a man invests before she's attracted, the less value his attention has. But flip that around. Let her invest first. Let her wonder where she stands, and your attention becomes a reward. And that, right there, is the essence of what divides men who attract from men who chase. The attractive man doesn't need to prove anything. He has options. And even if he doesn't, he behaves as if he does. That's what women respond to. Perceived abundance. Not desperation disguised as kindness. And it's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about shifting your internal frame. Robert Greene, in The Art of Seduction, explains that seduction isn't about technique, it's about presence. The seducer owns the room without saying a word. He listens more than he talks. He pauses. He lets silence do the heavy lifting. Think about that. The man who needs her validation? He fills every space. He over-explains. He tries to entertain. But the man who knows his value? He can look her in the eye, say nothing, and create tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. That's the difference. And that's why the key isn't found in some clever pickup line or perfect text message. It's in how you see yourself. Because a man who truly believes he is valuable won't chase. He will select. He will decide. And she'll feel it. She'll sense that she can't play the same game she plays with other guys. That she actually has to show up, earn his attention, and maybe, just maybe, seduce him. That's when the dynamic flips. That's when attraction is born. When she feels like she's the one pursuing something real, something rare. But let's go deeper. Because attraction isn't just about how you act around women. It's about how you live when you're not around them. The men who attract without even trying all have one thing in common. They are locked into a purpose greater than women. And that's not some alpha buzzword or motivational cliche. It's biological. A man who is mission-focused signals to a woman's subconscious, I don't need you to complete me, I'm already moving. You can come along for the ride or not. This frames everything. It makes you unpredictable. It gives your energy an edge. Because women aren't attracted to men who are available 24/7. They're drawn to men who are rarely available because they're building, creating, mastering their craft, chasing excellence. A man who's in motion. A man who doesn't pause his journey for anyone. Not because he's playing hard to get, but because his time is sacred, and that sacred energy is magnetic. She starts to wonder what you're doing when you're not texting, who you're seeing, what you're thinking. You stop becoming an open book. You become a mystery worth solving. That's the paradox. The less you chase, the more she desires. Because what she can't immediately have, she starts to fantasize about. And that's not manipulation. That's attraction psychology 101. It's the tension of the unknown, the thrill of the unpredictable, the seduction of masculine presence. You become the story she tells her friends about. You become the one she compares other men to. Not because you chased her, but because you stopped chasing everyone and chose yourself. Now here's a deeper layer most men never consider. Chasing is emotional. Attraction is energetic. Let me explain. When a man chases, he's operating from a place of internal lack. He feels like something is missing and he thinks she is the solution. His energy is needy, anxious, uncertain, even if his words sound confident. And women feel that dissonance. They're wired for it, because their attraction doesn't respond to words. It responds to energy, to congruence, to how grounded you are in yourself. That's why two men can say the exact same thing to a woman, and she'll be turned off by one and turned on by the other. It's not about the words. It's about who he is when he says them. The man who attracts doesn't seek her to complete him. He doesn't need her to validate him. His energy is calm, solid, like an oak tree. You can feel his weight even when he's silent. And that groundedness, that masculine stillness, is what pulls her in. You want to know something else? The man who attracts rarely operates on reaction. The man who pursues is always reacting. She doesn't text back. He spirals. She takes hours to respond. He double texts. She flirts with someone else. He gets emotional. The attractive man, on the other hand, remains still, not cold, not indifferent, but composed, because his frame isn't being hijacked by external signals. He trusts himself. He trusts the process. And because of that, he's not afraid to walk away. That, right there, is power. Because attraction cannot exist without the possibility of loss. If she knows you'll always be there, no matter how she acts, there's no pressure, no urgency, no fire. But when she senses, not hears, senses, that you will not tolerate disrespect, that you will walk if the vibe is wrong, she adjusts. She steps up. She becomes invested. And now the balance of power shifts, not through games, but through boundaries. Men who chase don't set boundaries. They fear them, because boundaries mean risking the connection. But men who attract know this truth. The right woman is never pushed away by your standards. She's attracted because of them. Now let's bring in a concept from evolutionary psychology. In pre-modern tribes, high-value males weren't the ones chasing every woman around the camp. They were the hunters, the protectors, the ones with skills, the ones women competed for. And the traits that made them attractive then are still hardwired into the female brain today. Presence, leadership, composure, selective attention. A man who gives his attention to everyone is perceived as low value, because if you're available to everyone, then you're not valuable to anyone. Scarcity creates value. Attention that is earned is craved, and that craving is what makes attraction grow. Here's an analogy. Think of a man's attention like fire. If you light a fire under a woman too soon, she warms up quickly, and then walks away. But if you build the heat slowly, if you let her come closer step by step, she gets addicted to the warmth. And when you pull back just slightly, she chases the flame. That's how tension is created. That's how desire builds. But this only works if your attention is intentional. Not desperate, not passive, not scattered. Women don't fall for the man who does the most. They fall for the man who makes them feel the most. And feeling is created through unpredictability, suspense, challenge, and masculine self-control. So here's a question to ask yourself. Are you trying to win her? Or are you inviting her into your world? That one shift in mindset will change everything. The man who tries to win her bends his frame. He adapts to her mood. He tries to guess what she wants. The man who invites her into his world does the opposite. He offers a taste of his reality and lets her decide whether she's ready to enter it. He doesn't convince. He doesn't prove. He simply is. And that's more seductive than any pickup line ever will be. Women have heard it all. They've seen it all. But what they rarely encounter is a man who is truly unapologetic about his presence. A man who isn't trying to manage her impression of him, who isn't walking on eggshells, who isn't playing it safe just to avoid rejection. Because here's the final truth for this section. Rejection only hurts the man who ties his worth to the outcome. The attractive man knows that rejection isn't personal, it's data, it's direction, and most of the time it's protection. He doesn't crumble when she pulls back. He doesn't panic. He observes, adjusts, moves forward. He understands that attraction isn't a single moment, it's an unfolding, a dance, and sometimes the most powerful move is to do nothing at all. Let's take a moment and look at what's really happening beneath the surface when a man chases. It's not just about wanting a woman, it's about craving emotional certainty. It's the silent belief that if I can get her, I'll feel better about myself. And that belief is poison. Because the moment your self-worth becomes dependent on her validation, you've already lost the game, not to her, to yourself. This is where the subtle desperation leaks out. In the overtexting, in the oversharing, in the eagerness to please. It's not what you say. It's the emotional need behind what you say that kills the attraction. Women are intuitive. They don't need logic to detect weakness. They feel it. And no matter how smooth your lines are, if they sense that you're using them to fill a void inside yourself, they pull away. Now contrast that with a man who has already validated himself. He's not afraid of her silence. He doesn't panic when things aren't moving fast. He doesn't try to fix the vibe when there's tension, because he understands something the average man doesn't. Tension is part of the seduction. And sometimes when things aren't flowing, it's not a cue to try harder. It's a test. A moment to lean back, breathe, and let her come forward. This is emotional control. And emotional control is masculine power. Women aren't attracted to men who are always confident. They're attracted to men who manage their state no matter what happens. That's what creates safety. That's what builds polarity. That's what turns a simple conversation into an unforgettable encounter. Now here's the twist. The man who attracts rarely moves fast. He paces himself. He creates space. He's not in a rush to get her number, to take her out, to escalate. Why? Because he understands something fundamental. Slow seduction creates deep investment. Think of it like wine. The longer it breathes, the richer it becomes. When you rush a connection, you rob it of mystery. But when you unfold slowly, deliberately, with restraint, you create the kind of anticipation that women fantasize about. The pursuit mindset says, I need to lock this down before I lose it. The attraction mindset says, if it's meant, it'll build, naturally. And here's where it gets even more powerful. The man who attracts doesn't just control his pace, he controls the frame. Most guys unconsciously fall into her frame. They let her lead the tone, the pace, the emotional dynamic, and they adapt to it. But the man who sets the frame, he leads the emotional rhythm. He's not afraid to flirt with tension, to disagree, to tease, to push back, not to be difficult, but to maintain polarity. He doesn't fear being misunderstood in the short term because he's playing a long game. And that long game, it's not about conquest, it's about influence. This is where true attraction starts to blend into something more powerful than just chemistry. It starts becoming emotional imprinting. When a woman feels something with you that she can't feel with anyone else, uncertainty mixed with presence, challenge mixed with warmth, mystery mixed with safety, she remembers you, not just physically, psychologically. Because most men are forgettable, predictable, interchangeable. But the man who understands these nuances, he becomes unforgettable. And not because he begged for her attention, not because he performed, but because he was so anchored in himself that he left an impression on her nervous system. Now let's go even further. There's a secret that seducers like Casanova, Don Juan, even modern masters like Zan Perian and David Data understand. Attraction is not just about dominance, it's about invitation. True masculine presence doesn't push, it pulls, not with force, but with depth. A man who embodies attraction invites a woman into an emotional experience, one that feels exciting but safe, unpredictable but trustworthy, passionate but grounded. That's the paradox. The man who attracts isn't chasing her body. He's inviting her soul to dance. And when a woman senses that she's not just being pursued as an object, but being seen as a woman, her guard drops, her femininity blossoms, and she leans in, willingly, fully. But again, only the man who has cultivated himself can create that space. Because if you don't know who you are, you can't hold space for her to open. If you're afraid of conflict, of silence, of her emotions, you collapse. You become the pursuer again. You revert to safety behaviors. But the man who attracts stays rooted, in pleasure, in presence, in power. And this doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean faking stoicism. It means knowing yourself so deeply that nothing she says or does can shake your center. From that place, even rejection becomes attractive. Because when you walk away without bitterness, with your head high and your energy intact, it sends a signal that hits deep. I don't chase. I don't beg. I build. I lead. I attract. And that, my friend, is the energy of a man she'll never forget. There's a phenomenon most men never learn to harness: energetic polarity. Polarity is the invisible tension between the masculine and the feminine. It's not about roles. It's not about who pays for dinner. It's about who leads the energy and who surrenders to it. And here's what separates men who attract from men who pursue. The attractive man maintains polarity. The pursuer collapses it. When you chase, you're stepping into the feminine role. You're seeking, you're reaching, you're emotionally reacting. And whether she's conscious of it or not, the woman begins to feel like she's the one holding the frame. She becomes the stable energy. You become the fluctuating one. At first, she might play along. She might even flirt. But the second she senses that she's in control of the emotional rhythm, something shuts off inside her. Not because she wants to dominate you, but because she can no longer relax into your masculinity. That's the unspoken truth. Women want to surrender, but only to a man they trust can lead. And leading doesn't mean controlling. It means holding your direction, even when she tests it. It means staying grounded, even when the moment gets messy. It means being the container for her chaos, not reacting to it. The man who attracts knows this. He expects the emotional waves. He welcomes them, because he knows he's the mountain, she's the storm, and he doesn't flinch. This is why the men who are obsessed with, what do I say next, or how do I keep her interested, are always behind. They're chasing techniques, tactics, scripts. But women don't fall for scripts. They fall for states, emotional states. They want to feel something, and they want to feel it through you. The pursuer is externally focused. He watches her every move, waits for cues, tries to adjust. The attractive man is internally driven. He creates the energy he wants to live in, and invites her into it. That's the shift. You stop asking, how do I impress her? And you start asking, how do I live in a way that makes women want to impress me? It's a completely different paradigm. Because here's the real difference. The man who chases wants permission to feel valuable. The man who attracts gives himself permission, and then decides who's worthy of sharing that value with. Now let's talk about lifestyle. Because attraction doesn't live in your words, it lives in your world. A man who's constantly chasing women usually lacks one thing: direction. Not busyness, not distractions. Real, soul-level direction. A path, a mission. Something that consumes his focus so deeply that everything else becomes secondary. When you have this kind of direction, your energy shifts. You stop needing women to complete your identity, because your life already feels full. You're no longer waiting for her to respond, you're already moving. She can either step into your world or watch it pass by. And this is where attraction becomes inevitable. Because now when you speak to her, you're not coming from a place of hunger, you're coming from overflow. You're sharing your fire, not asking her to ignite it. And women can feel that contrast instantly. Let me paint the picture clearly. Two men walk into a room. One is scanning every corner, looking for attention, hoping to get lucky, adjusting his posture every time a woman walks by. That's the pursuer. The other man walks in like he owns the moment. Not arrogantly, not loudly, just anchored, fully in his body, fully aware of his environment. He speaks slowly. He listens carefully. He doesn't rush. That's the man women feel without him saying a word. Because confidence isn't loud. It's subtle. It's in how you breathe, how you pause, how you don't need to fill every silence with something clever. That's the man who attracts. And guess what? He's rare. Not because he's genetically superior, but because he's chosen a different path. He's chosen to build character instead of strategy. He's chosen to cultivate presence instead of performance. And that choice rewires everything. Women are not turned on by how hard you try. They're turned on by the depth of your presence, by the way you hold eye contact without flinching, by the fact that you're fully here, not lost in outcome. And that's why the man who attracts often does less. Not because he's lazy, but because his energy does the talking. She feels it before you open your mouth. She doesn't even know why she's drawn in. She just is. Because you are you, unapologetically, fully, without reaching. And that is the difference. So here's what you need to understand. Every time you choose to chase, to overgive, to over-explain, to over-invest before she's earned it, you reinforce the identity of a man who needs to be chosen. But the moment you shift, the moment you stop proving and start embodying, everything changes. You stop becoming the seeker, you become the source of your value, the source of your own validation, the source of the energy that women crave but rarely encounter. Because most men are out there trying to win women's attention. But the men who win long-term attraction, they live in a state that naturally pulls it. They don't chase, they don't beg, they decide. And in that decision, in that energy, they become the man she remembers, even if she only met him once. So don't just learn lines, don't just copy techniques. Become the man who attracts by nature, the man whose presence speaks louder than his words, the man who doesn't need to be validated because he already owns his worth. And if this message hit you on a deeper level, if something inside you clicked, if you felt like you've been playing the wrong role for too long, then this is your moment to shift everything. And I want you to do two things right now. First, drop a comment below and tell me the part that hit you the hardest. Don't hold back. I read every comment, and your insight might help another man wake up to his own power. Second, share this video with one friend. Just one. A brother, a teammate, someone who you know is stuck in that exhausting cycle of pursuit and needs to wake up to who he really is. Because this isn't just about attraction, it's about identity. It's about masculinity. It's about taking your power back and never giving it away again. You're not here to chase, you're here to attract. And once you fully step into that, she'll feel it. Everyone will. Let's make sure more men remember who the hell they are. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because this is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and never forget, you are the prize.